And we're live, guys. Whoo, few minutes late as we were dealing with double technical difficulty and improper name calling as I was calling Lauren Emily. So welcome to the share around section, Lauren Emily. Lauren, please feel free. Feel free to during this awkward share around section, feel free to share this and post this to all of your links and Facebook pages as much as you would like. And I'm going to play the share around music.
Sounds great.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. Ready, Kenny? Ready? Lauren, you ready?
Ready.
All right, we're going to let the real music play now. Get that intro going. And we're back. We are back for real, and we're getting all kinds of back feed here. Who's back feeding? Is that me? Guys, we are.
Hopefully, it's not for me.
Go on mute a minute, Kenny. How's that?
That
Coming
sounds
from you,
better.
bro. It's coming from you. Got your earbuds?
Still muted. There you go.
What about now?
No, let's see. No, it's still, I'm hearing myself.
All right, I'm going to go get earbuds.
All right, man. Well, guys, look, while Kenny is getting himself set up there, first of all, please forgive us. This has been a pretty lumpy start. I had some technical issues I was telling Lauren about. Kenny had some technical issues, and now we're having these back feed issues. So we will get there. But today we're going to, when Kenny gets back, and he's back now, we're going to tie together the last couple of streams with the dog mental fatigue and intelligence, the handler mental fatigue, and I'm not going to say handler intelligence, but the mental fatigue and all of the things that can cause you to make, not some of the greatest decisions that we talked about in the last stream. We're going to pull those all together today with Lauren, who Kenny's been working with, helping from afar, just a couple miles. And we'll let Lauren give her bio and her tracking bio and some of the things that she's been working on as of late, and how the feedback and some of the things from the live streams and Kenny's direct input has helped her. So thanks for joining, Lauren.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Kenny, any more you want to add to that intro before we let Lauren give her tracking bio and her background? Muted. Yeah. Kenny, your technical stuff is... Lauren, while Kenny gets us started out, why don't you go ahead and tell us? Tell us where you're from, how long you've been tracking, where you're at in your tracking trajectory, and some of the key points that Kenny's been helping you with. And then when we get it sorted out, we'll dive deep.
Sounds great. So like I said, my name's Lauren. I live out here in Colorado. I have been tracking, so this will be my third season this year. So I've done 2 full seasons so far. Big difference, I think, to point out with the tracking out here compared to where I think most other people here are going to be at is I would love if I had the opportunity for 100 tracks plus a year. First season, I didn't adjust my work schedule at all. I just kind of took what would come in through. I track as part of Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. So I would kind of take what I could that would come through that network. Only ended up with 6 tracks that year. Our tracking season is also fairly condensed. Most of the calls we get, I would say, are in the month of September, since that's our archery elk season.
Oh, really?
We track out here. So September is very busy for us. I've gotten calls like last season. I did a couple in October, I think maybe 1 in November. But once you get through, I'd say probably second rifle, at least for me, things start to taper out a little bit. So our season is, I would say, much more concentrated, at least from my experience. So did 6 tracks that year. Had actually what I would consider a fairly good season. We had one recovery, another one that was kind of assisted, but one that was on our own. There's only one deer of those. I did 1 deer, and that's the only one where I kind of question whether or not it was truly dead. There were very hit or miss ideas of the shot, and it's really hard to say. I think based off how far we tracked him, it's probably alive. But all the other ones that we didn't find, we at least had confirmation, or, my dog took me to a private property line that we couldn't cross, and somebody or saw it nearby dead on that property not too long afterwards. So felt pretty good coming out of that season, at least for, my little bit of experience. Started training. I tested my first... So I have 2 red bone coon hounds is what I track with.
Oh, okay.
I started training for after that season for my UBT1 tests, tested both of my dogs. I started my dogs off later in life. They because I didn't actually know blood tracking existed until a couple of years ago. Yep. So my main dog, he just turned 9, so he was 7 when we started, and my younger one just turned 6, so he was 4 when I started him. So we started doing training for our first UBT tests. I passed with my younger dog. My older one, I ended up not passing with that year for different reasons. But I, moving forward now, realize a lot of the training mistakes that I was making, which I'll get into in just a second. But got through that, got some great tips at our roundup that year on things I could do moving forward. So I started putting that in, and then went into last season, did between the two dogs, probably around 12 or so tracks at least. Had some pretty cool recoveries, but there were a lot of tracks that I felt like I wasn't quite sure how to read them. I had several that we had confirmation of life, which was great, but then a lot of others that, especially on the elk side, these animals can go so far, even if they are fatally wounded, and they and that's something that's been hard for me to adjust to. For reference, I'm an equine surgeon, so I do also large animals as well, but my perception of what an animal can put up with is very different. A horse gets hurt and it has very little pain tolerance. It's kind of impressive to me how far these animals can go without, with an arrow in them or a bullet. Wow. And so for those, they like to join back in the herd. They don't always leave a lot of blood after they come out of the bed. And so it was hard for me to learn how to read that. And but I think, overall had a good season, but I was definitely struggling with the handler fatigue by the end and having a string of non-recoveries and wondering what I could do differently. And I worry a lot about not only not being able to help the hunter or leaving an animal out there, but also effects that I would have on my dog. I think that's what hurt me the most is, did I pull my dog off of a track that he was on and I just wasn't reading him properly? And
the answer to that is probably. We all have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also I really start to overthink like what scent could be doing and things like that. And so I got through the season and came out of it. In my head, I'm like, I've got some good things to work on. Started preparing for our roundup this beginning of this month. Actually, it's been less than a month to retest the dog. So I was going to do a UBT2 with my younger dog and a UBT1 with my older one. And as I started that training, that was the point for me where I think a lot of the issues, or I really realized that I needed help with training. And and that was the point I reached out to Kenny to get assistance. So I also kind of made the mistake. Both of my red bones are very different. My older one is very independent. He's got a high prey drive. He is one that couldn't really give two shits what I'm doing. He will do what he wants. And usually if I try to tell him no, and he's on, if he's on live prey or he really wants to do something, it'll actually make him more driven to do that if I tell him no. And my younger one is much softer. And they work very differently. And I think one of the big mistakes I made is training them both the same and not personalizing it for the individual dog. But my younger dog is a big air center. And one thing he started doing was I would tell him to track. He'd go maybe 10, 20 yards, and then his nose would come up. And especially if he was downwind, his goal was to find the hide. And I come from a nose canine scent work background prior to blood tracking. So I did the nose work with both of them. And one of the things that that Kenny actually pointed out to me that I didn't realize I was doing was making my dog depend on me too much in terms of where the line was. So one thing that we're taught in scent work is when you're given a search area, you're given your boundaries for that search area. And as a handler, you can let your dog go outside of it, but you as the handler stop at the edge of that boundary and you hold. They're on like a 10, 20 foot line. You hold there, everybody I've worked with says your dog doesn't need to go further than that. It'll figure it out. And so I'd stand there, I'd hold, the dog would figure it out. It would come back and it would find source. So that's what I was doing on the line is instead of teaching them how to correct themselves and work through problems, I was I would maybe go 5 yards off the line and then I would stop and hold. My thought being they would realize they're off. They'd figure out they'd come back and, keep going. But then that I was struggling with that with both my my younger dog in terms of getting him the drive to do it, because he just wants to air send it. I've started doing some line discipline stuff with him lately, and even with a treat in every single footprint, the minute I tell him to track, he'll maybe do the first two, and then his nose immediately goes up, and his goal is to get to the end. So now I'm having to retrain him to work the line. But I think the biggest thing I've learned, especially through working with Kenny, was that I was teaching my dogs to rely too much on me as opposed to solving the problem. Because in my mind, if I brought them back to the line, that would teach them, oh, I need to stay on this scent and follow that and not go off on something else. But I didn't realize that it's not necessarily that simple. So I mean, Kenny, I'm sure you can elaborate better on that than I can, but those were kind of the things that I learned starting off. And it's, I ended up backing out of my UBT2 with my younger dog, realizing I needed to back up with him. And then my older one, we ended up passing with an excellent rating. And I think what was the coolest thing for me was he has a tendency to blow past his turns. And one of the things that Kenny really helped me with was learning how to bring him back. And he, during the test, blew through his second turn, but he corrected immediately on his own. It was like everything that we had worked on kind of came together, and I saw all the pieces finally fit, which for me, and dealing with I think the dog fatigue and the handler fatigue leading up to this was kind of a huge moment for us, and seeing how that work can pay off. But I'll let Kenny, you get more into the details.
That's thanks. That's a hell of an intro. Good deal. By the
way, I wasn't sure how in depth you wanted me to go.
That's good, and we'll dive even deeper here in a minute as we start to parcel things out. But so it sounds like you're pretty much normal tracker. You go through all of the highs and lows and strife and second guessing as everybody. But if we can talk about it and people can learn from some of the things that you went through and we've all gone through, maybe help flatten somebody else's curve, that's better. Kenny, give us a sound check.
Nope.
No audio.
Nope, nothing yet.
So, all right. Well, we'll let Kenny continue to work on that. Kenny, when you get it, just blurt out, "I'm here." No, nothing, bro. Today is not a good day for tech. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm still having it a little bit.
All right, let's see.
There you are. There you are.
There you go.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Now I don't have to talk head, folks. Thank God.
Yeah, it won't let me use my headset for the speaker and microphone.
Okay. Well,
it's something with it's something with StreamYard. So
we'll start bashing on my platform. Emily, you put your earbuds in, Emily? No, you didn't.
Emily?
There I go again. You look like somebody I know whose name is Emily, so I am so sorry about that.
Except that name right there on the screen.
I know. So, Kenny, could you hear you could hear us okay? So you heard Lauren. So what are your comments on that stuff? I mean, that's a lot of normal stuff there, but some interesting things that are probably worth diving into a little bit.
Yeah. So, first off, one thing I want to say is when she reached out to me, she'd already beat herself up pretty bad.
Yeah. Guilty.
I mean, it was, last week we talked about the handler side of things, the handler mental preparedness, and all that was completely shot. But she reached out, and one thing I want to commend her on is being open to the advice. Because a lot of times I get people that will call and ask for advice, and then they'll question everything, or they already know it. And Emily, no, Lauren, let's mess with Matt.
No, should I change my name on the screen? Lauren / Emily.
Yeah, change that, please. I don't know.
No, but basically, she explained everything that was going on, and really, Lauren, I don't think you really understood what was happening, because you were changing like different hooves from different animals, trying to figure out, hey, what in the world's going on.
Yeah.
She seemed to think it was more of a scent issue than it was a dog issue and a handler issue.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be difficult, especially when it's compounded.
Mm-hmm.
I should have been better prepared and pulled up some of the stuff that she'd sent, and the dog would start to trail and hit a turn and just wander off. And then, like she said, she would actually bring it back on the, around the corner, instead of making it work through that corner like we talk about all the time.
I see what you're saying.
Bring it about 20, 30, 40 yards before the turn on the part that you already trailed, and let the dog work through that. That's some of the advice I gave. And if I remember right, Lauren, we backed up and we didn't age them very much at one point.
Yeah, I think my first one that I sent you was it was an overnight lay, and we laid it in the rain. It rained overnight. It was probably 12 hours old. Let's see, a guy and his dog had just gone back and forth straight through those tracks. They were older hooves. It was a great setup all around. And then I think pretty quickly after that, backed off to just a couple hours, or even on some like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I started seeing it come together before she did, obviously, because that's, I do this all the time, but, even during some of the training, I could tell, Lauren, that you were getting frustrated. You're like, is this dog really going to make it?
Yeah.
And even if I remember right before the test, you were questioning it. Should I test or?
Yeah, it was tough, especially I think the first bit of information that you gave me that really helped, or the first bit of advice, which was actually something that I've been feeling in my gut for a while, was with my younger dog, with Rusty, and doing the UBT2, kind of confirming that it was better just to take that step back with him. And so I made the decision with him just to, because he was very, I guess for the people that don't know, for context, he was one that, honestly, going in my first season, that dog, my biggest debate was which dog was I going to use. I was kind of set mentally on using Sterling, my older one, because he was the one that he doesn't get put off by difficult situations usually. Like and he doesn't get thrown off by as many weird things as my younger one does. Like I said, my younger one's a lot softer. But when I was doing practice tracks with them initially, Rusty was sticking right with the line, and Sterling was the one that tended to get more distracted by live prey. And over time, his tracking style has changed, and it got to the point where I don't know that the light bulb had truly gone off for him, like it did the other one. So learning that it's okay to take a step back was a big thing for me, and it was actually a huge sigh of relief to have to only prepare the one dog and be able to focus on just the getting ready for the season with the younger one and doing right by him.
Yeah.
I think that was huge. But with Sterling, there were definitely times, I think like 2 before, where I laid one short. So what we started doing was doing one short track that was fresh, that was like 150 yards with a single 90. I ran that, did great. corrected his turn, like Kenny had taught me, and then went to do another track with him that was like UBT1 style, aged properly and everything. And he didn't really want anything to do with it. He was looking at a dog that was walking along the outskirts of the area. He would track for a little bit and then he would kind of stop, and his drive was very hit or miss. So that was tough for me. And I was really starting to doubt whether I was, I took it more on myself. Like what else was I doing wrong? What was I doing to discourage him? Or had I killed my dog's drive by making so many mistakes as a handler?
Go ahead, Kenny. I just threw you on mute because we're still getting a little bit of speed.
Yeah, I was doing some tweaking while that was going on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I had to change microphones and change things up. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So I'm kind of lost right now. Sorry about that.
Well, no, that's okay. Lauren was just talking about, and notice I didn't call her Emily. She just talking about, how she thought she was just, going backwards with the dog and until she started working with you again, and just the distractions and things like that, and the beating herself up like you talked about.
Yeah. And, one thing I want to touch on real quick, and I know it's a little bit off topic, but I think Lauren, you'd be a good person to kind of attest to this. Now you've trained with elk hooves, what else? Deer.
I train with elk hooves, deer, moose, and pronghorn. Mostly deer because they're the easiest. I can throw them in the shoes. The elk and the moose are a little bit more difficult, but I use all four.
Okay, Kenny, hold on.
Okay.
How in the hell do you train with elk hooves and moose hooves? Put them on a big pipe and go tunk.
Now, because I haven't made one yet, but I have plans to make one. So the PVC on the end of a broom handle?
Yeah.
You can make that just a bigger diameter PVC pipe.
Just a bigger okay.
Yeah. Right now, that's it. Part of my plans for the summer is to actually make one, because right now because I usually have my GPS in one hand, and if I'm going to lay blood in the other. I currently tie the leg to a rope that's tied to the back of my pants and walk with it, which has gotten me some very strange comments here around the city of Fort Collins. But yeah, right now it's more of a, if I do decide, I'll throw in usually an elk and a moose hook, because I don't have as many of them as I do deer, so I won't train with them as often. Yeah. Usually it's just something where if I want to throw in another aspect to keep my dog interested, just to vary the scent profile a little bit more.
Oh, you mean variation? Hey, Kenny, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yep.
So Kenny, go ahead and go where you were going with this.
Okay, so do you notice any difference in the dog from tracking deer to moose to elk?
No.
Nope.
And I actually started with just blood when I first started out because of the variety of species that we can track out here. We recovered a bear last year, and he's never smelled, seen, touched a bear. Like, it was completely foreign to him, but he did it, recovered it. But I initially was just blood, and then I've got some deer hooves, and I didn't see it affect the way he tracks elk or anything.
Yeah, the reason I was going there is because so many people are quick to say, well, elk doesn't have an interdigital gland, or bear doesn't have an interdigital gland, but they still give off pheromones. An elk, it's through their metatarsal and their urinary.
Yep.
So they still release the same pheromones, the same declining health. The bear does it through the pedal gland in the paw. I just want to hit on that again, because still I hear it all the time. People say, that interdigital is a hoax. The dogs aren't tracking it. The truth is they every mammal releases pheromones, including us when our health declines. Even other times, we're always releasing pheromones. But I wanted to touch on that because, you're the first person we've had on who, I shouldn't say first person that tracks multiple species. I track multiple species in a high fence, but in the field, in the, I guess you'd say the wild. And, you routinely train with multiple species.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to hit on that.
And we've talked about it before. Daryl, Kenny, tracked a horse that they found dead. Where the hell? Horse don't have an interdigital gland.
No.
So we've talked about it many, many times. And you're right. It's always worth bringing up again because the interdigital gland is real, yes, in deer, but it's not, it just sounds weird to say, we're interdigital gland tracking. Well, I mean, so it just happens to be the gland that produces the pheromone in whitetail. Other glands and other things produce in other species, but it is still the declining health. And that's what people, really should latch on to, is it's not the interdigital gland per se that we're tracking. We just, whitetail people say that because it's just become the parlance of the genre, discipline. But it's declining health and health status pheromones. Yep.
Yeah. And interestingly, I'd say my dog actually on a lot of tracks will show more enthusiasm when I put him on an elk than compared to some of the deer. I'd say where they really struggle is if that elk starts to try to herd back up and you get into a big bedding area, then it gets a little bit harder for them because they don't have as defining of a scent track, I guess. But I mean, it's still all there. And if you think about too, it's like others have said, it's the scent profile that you put them on, and that's what we're trying to teach them to follow. And it's the dander, the saliva, urine, the pheromones, everything.
But it's the pheromones that drive them to decide whether they can get this deer or not. They can, based on all of the other things in the cocktail, they could probably track the right deer for a long time. But if they know it's not going to die because of the pheromone, that's when they decide that, all right, I've had enough of this. And Dixie comes back and jumps on Kenny. Right, Kenny? Uh-oh, your audio's gone again, buddy.
Lost him again.
Your audio's gone. And now,
All right.
There you are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, people keep calling and texting, even though I have it on do not.
No, you're gone again, pal.
All right, I'm back.
You're back. Yep.
Yeah, Lyle sent me a couple of texts, and every time it happens, it kicks my microphone off.
Okay.
Text Lyle and tell him quit texting me.
Yeah, I'm going to. Lyle, I'll do that right now. Lyle, if you're watching, quit texting.
Yeah, I know we kind of got off a little bit, and I just
okay.
wanted to share that because you brought up the different things that you train with. And one thing I want to know, or I want to point out is, once you started seeing the slightest bit of improvement, your mindset changed immediately. I mean, even when you had a little setback later on, you never got back to the point that you were.
Yeah.
And we talked 2 weeks ago about, training your dog how to problem solve. And that's exactly what you did through those 90-degree turns. People wonder why 90-degree turns. People wonder why scent gaps, or sorry, he just texted me again.
I'm sending the message, buddy. We can still hear you though.
Yeah, I had to click resume. Anyways, so that now I'm losing my mind, lose my track.
talking about how she didn't when things did go bad.
Yeah, the problem solving. Yeah, working through the problem solving, and for those of you listening to audio only, we've had technical difficulties all night. But you want to train through those things. I know people, they don't understand like putting in scent gaps and why 90-degree turns are important, because dogs will tend to overshoot more than they will a sweep. Mm-hmm. And it's all about building in those problem solving skills.
Yeah.
And there was a post on Facebook, and I can't remember who it was that posted it, but the question was, should you trust your dog or know your dog? It was something to that effect. I don't know if you saw it, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, I commented on it. Rather lengthy.
Right. So, and Lauren, you weren't trusting your dog, and rightfully so. But one thing I want to say is you truly didn't know your dog.
Yeah.
You thought you did. But if you don't truly know your dog, you can't trust your dog.
Yeah.
And through working through this and watching those problem solving skills of the dog come to fruition, you began to know your dog and trust your dog.
Yeah. And two big things that I'll say with that is, one, you also pushed me to do this. If anybody out there doesn't have a GoPro or some way to record themselves yet, get one. I finally made the jump and got one this year, and it has been so helpful, because I thought my dog, and he can be harder to read, but because he'll work even if he doesn't have something, just because he likes to do it. But it's really helped me learn my dog. And after I started seeing improvements working on even just the 90, it actually made it more fun for me to start adding in things. So like tracks that I've laid moving forward, I'm gradually starting to add in more little challenges for him. And because in the past, my thought was I want to make every practice track as seamless as possible for him. I don't know why I thought that was going to be good for him in the long run, but I just wanted him to be successful. Do. And it wasn't until I've since seeing how he responded with the 90s and how he improved and starting to challenge him, I'm now starting to pick up more and more little things that he does when he either, if I do if I circle back or something and he gets off of that and he's trying to work through that scent pool, like I'm starting to pick up on those little things. And I feel like now, whereas before, I think I was more blindly trusting my dog, because I didn't know any better on a real track. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I hope we get there. Now I feel like I can by this next season, I feel like I'm going to be able to read him a lot better and actually know more about what he's telling me than I was before.
Yeah, because you know your dog now.
Yep.
Yeah. Will your dog's recall to tone?
That is also on our list of to-dos this year, because if his nose turns on, his ears turn off. Luckily we have to track on lead. Out here in Colorado and Wyoming, both.
Yeah.
But I have a knot at the end of my line that I keep a firm grasp on in the hopes that he doesn't get away, because he doesn't care if I fall on my face. And
oh no, yeah, neither do bloodhounds. No comment, yep. Kenny. Believe me. But you do have GPS collar though, right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought you said that. And the only reason that's about recalls is you talk about videoing. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this a million times. I even shared Kenny, Frank texted me today and said that you recommended he get a GoPro or an action camera and video Frank Rotundi from here in Michigan and video his tracks. He says, hey, man, I just talked to Kenny. That's what he said. What are you using? And it prompted me to think about, a post that I had put out last summer where by breaking, I had my phone off lead. I was holding my phone running a practice line. And when I went back and watched it, that's when I really noticed the tell I worked, I built in a backtrack or something, and the line ended. And when I went back and watched that film, it was obvious as could be, and I didn't notice it quite readily in real time. So I am a humongous advocate for videoing your lines. And the only reason I asked about recall is we talk about, and we've talked about it on these streams before, is if you can, even though it's not legal to do it in the real world, if you can run a practice lines off lead, then you can really get a feel for what your dog's natural tendencies are. And if you can video that, and that's what I did with Baru. I wasn't following 30 feet behind every step she made, getting tangled and cussing and swearing and getting them out of the mental state. I just stood back like this and watched. And I watched the film. I go, oh my God, it was it's something. So don't do it until you're ready. But boy, when it works out and you can, I just think it's huge. Even though you can't track off lead, if you can understand the dog's natural tendencies, you can apply that when you're 30 feet behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially like you talked about, and I know in search and rescue and other scent work avenues, they want you to stop at the turn.
Mm-hmm.
But when you train them off lead, like Matt is talking about, and then you see their, how they naturally work that turn and come back. Some dogs, it may be 20, 30 yards or more.
Mm-hmm.
But they do that and then they work back.
Yep.
So to kind of, and that's pretty exaggerated, but there are dogs that do that. But then you can see just how much you've been holding them back and not allowing them to problem solve. And when you, like Matt said, when you can see what they do naturally, that kind of their style, then when you get in the field, you'll have an understanding. Okay, well, I know the trail went that way, but the dog's doing this, and it's going to circle back, and that's when you start building the trust, because you know what your dog is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
that's a good point.
Yep. And one of the big things for me was learning the difference between searching when they're out of odor and then problem solving when they're in odor. For example, overshoots a 90. Brew almost every time is going to overshoot a 90. She's going to make a right-handed turn and acquire it nearly immediately and go about her business. But I know when she's out of odor and she's searching, as opposed to some other kind of scent puzzle where the scent's present but it's not linear, and she's sorting that out. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just different. And you can learn that stuff in isolation drills, but it's just so liberating when you can sit there, film that stuff, especially if you know the line and you know where that scent challenge is or that turn is, and you know that they're not in order, assuming that there's not scent drift or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's just so, I don't know. I geek out on it, and I'm babbling right now because it's just fantastic. It's just huge. I love it.
I'm glad you brought up isolation drills, because that's something else I had Lauren do. And I said, don't worry about a 400 to 500 yard trail. Let's work on those 90s. Let's do shorter tracks and shorter trails and more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that worked out.
Yeah, it worked out beautifully. Like I said, I'm not a very emotional person. Like I feel normal emotions, but it was so cool seeing him correct himself for the first time. Like it was,
yes.
And all I did the week, and I was also really worried about overworking my dog, because prior to this year, I thought that I couldn't work him more than every 2 weeks. Otherwise his drive would go down. And I realized it was because I was doing the same thing with him, the same type of line, and the distance didn't really matter. And I think it was the week and a half before I tested, I was it was like right after I think I'd had the more difficult practice track where he didn't want to work. And I just laid two, I think they were like 150, 200-yard tracks, like very short, maybe 150 with single 90s. I did two of them, 45 minutes, and he did great on both of them. And then that was it before the test. And he had no problem with the, 500, I think it was closer to 500 yards. Like that wasn't an issue, but focusing on just the turns was kind of the key for him.
Well, because we've said it here more than once, Kenny, and many others. If the dog can follow a 200-yard line, it can follow an 800-yard line. It can do it.
Yep.
It's just a matter of what types of challenges are you going to put in there, and that's where the work is. A meandering 800-yard line that just meanders through the woods with no challenge, that doesn't tell you anything other than your dog can follow an 800-yard line that has no challenges. Most dogs can't.
Mm-hmm.
But that 200-yard line with a scent gap or a V back and a scent puzzle or whatever challenges you put in there, therein lies the value. And if you can video that,
mm-hmm.
and really break that down, come the old football coach coming out at me again, breaking that down and really understanding it, and then looking at your Garmin.
Yeah.
How did the dog? Do you track the dog over your line on your Garmin?
I do. Yeah, I use if I'm doing practice tracks, I'll use Onyx, and recently just tried using dog tracks. But whenever I work them, I've always got their Garmin going as well on their collar, but I don't usually have the Garmin running when I lay the track.
You say you do or don't?
I don't. I use for the dog collar and my Alpha, that's separate for the dog. If I'm laying the track, I will record mine on my phone, either on Onyx or dog tracks, and then I'll use both of them when I actually run it with the dog. So I do get to see that overlap.
And being on lead, I suppose that's you wouldn't get as much of a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, I am a humongous fan here recently of laying the line on the Garmin and then doing the overlay on the Garmin and
mm-hmm.
really, really understanding. We don't care. Nobody cares what you're doing.
Right.
What is the dog doing in relationship to that line? You know where the line is. You know where the odor is. You know where the corner is. You know where the V-back is. What did the dog do? And that's how I know that almost every stinking time Baru's going to overrun a 90 or a V-back for loop to the right and pick it right back up. I can almost take it to the bank, because you can get that a little bit with, because you're following 30 feet behind, so you're going to do that loop too. But boy, I just like seeing what the dog, because the dog can still do this, bracket that scent even 30 feet in front of you, and you can see that. And then so you can watch your video, then look at your overlay and say, oh my gosh, it really starts to put things together. At least it did for me.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to touch on is, Lauren, I feel like the reason why you trained the way you did is because that's what the majority of advice out there is. Don't set your dog up to fail on a training line.
Mm-hmm.
So many people says that. I mean, time and time again, your dog's got to have a win. You want the dog to have an easy win. Even when it comes to a real track, a lot of people say, oh, I need a puppy trail. No, you just need a track.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there and track. And if your dog's working that line perfect, the dog's not learning.
Right.
And neither are you.
What's that?
I said, neither are you as a handler.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, you see so many people post these beautiful lines. Oh, look how good my dog did. And I look at it and say, you didn't challenge your dog.
Yeah. I mean, you can look back at a lot of my posts from the last 2 years, and it's that same exact thing. And
we all did.
Yeah.
We all did.
It was, I think too, like I remember I had one of our recoveries from this past year. I think for me, the big thing about the challenging and the isolation training is is learning how to read the dogs. But I had one that we jumped this deer, had to come back the next morning, and about not even 100 yards from where we jumped it, he must have bedded down multiple times, because it was like around underneath this big pine, but there was like blood spot here, blood spot over here, blood spot over here. Like this thing was just up and down kind of in this huge area. And my dog hit it, worked kind of through the scent pool, broke out of it. But then I think I'd have to look back at my Onyx. We went at least a half mile the opposite direction from where that deer came out of that bed. And I honestly, thinking back, don't know that I could have noticed a difference, other than he kind of started to dull out towards the end of it. But it was like I think he also works off thermals a lot, and we were down kind of in a valley, and based off the time of day, I think he was working off that. The deer had actually unknowingly done a really sharp V back and then gone up an adjacent hill. So I think a lot of that scent was just flowing down. And so he was following that out. Yeah. But he, luckily there was plenty of blood for me to reset him on, and he found his way out. But it was, that was kind of one of the moments too, where I realized like, these are the types of things that I need to be putting into training him and preparing him for, because if I hadn't had such an obvious, I'm terrible at seeing sign on tracks, honestly, especially because if he gets going, he gets going pretty fast. He's not a slow dog. But it would make it a lot harder for me to have to reset if I didn't have such a large area, and teaching him how to work through that challenge. Cause that was something I just hadn't really focused on before. And it was just one of those instances that I can remember from last year where it made it very obvious the kind of the downfalls of how I'd been training in the past.
Yeah. And like I said, that's nothing against you, because that's what most people does. And that's most advice you see, especially on Facebook. You know, and they don't know any better. They're only repeating what they've been told for years, you know, but someone reached out to me the other day and they were asking for help, and they told me, well, I've been asking this person, talking to this person, that person. I read this, I read that. I said, well, first thing you need to do is pick one person or one thing and stick with that, because they were trying to do everything that everyone said, and that's a no-win situation. Mm-hmm. You know, you're just going to get frustrated. The dog's going to get frustrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to go back to, you said something, you know, and you're right. Your dog's got to be successful. And early on, you know, I guess it depends on how you're defining success. You know, to me, you know, the dog problem solving the VBAC is success. You know, that's not failure. You know, just because your overlay doesn't look like this, you know, you can't tell one color from the other because they're so tight. You know, that just because you loop off the line and then come back in, or maybe you loop twice and then come back, that is not failure. That is absolute success. You know, for the reasons you just described, is you know, you got to let your dog do that. Mm-hmm. Figure out its problem solving swagger. And, you know, going back to what we talked about, dog mental fatigue and the fatigue series, is, you know, smelling the scent is instinctive. You know, problem solving develops. You know, that's a skill that develops with experience. Repetition is the mother of all skill. You know, repeating them, putting them into situations where they have to repeatedly solve problems is how that problem solving develops. And maturity and age, you know, helps that along too. But yeah, I mean, my dogs, and Kenny, we talk about this a lot. You do, and I've never done it, but, you know, every one of my tracks has ended with a prize. You know, I've never had one not there. You know, but that's, you know, talking about success. You know, I don't know. You know, there's something to that though, because in the leased world, 60% of the time you don't get to the furry thing at the end. You know, nationally speaking, for leased.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what people, you know, forget about.
Yeah.
You know, I want my dog to be happy with just trailing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, because there's not always going to be that quote unquote prize at the end.
Yep.
You know, so I'll lay trails with nothing at the end. You know, where the scent stops, and just sit down and play with them. You know, so there's a lot of different tricks and techniques. You know, just like my stupid old bloodhound I had. You know, he didn't care about the deer at the end.
Lauren, I don't know if you listen to these much, but
I've heard the pattern. I've seen the.
Okay, you're onto it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, he did not care about the deer at the end. All he cared about is trailing.
Yeah. And Bruce, you know, she's got that class. I mean, it's a bloodhound trait, I think, for the most part, because my bloodhound is very similar. A lot of other bloodhound people I talk to don't care about the deer. They like the track. She likes her treat. Don't get me wrong. She'll find the deer. She'll come back and looking for me to get her dehydrated liver. Yeah, you know, but then she'll go lay down. Maybe she might lick the wound or shoot, but yeah, she and if it was too easy of a track, she'll wander around trying to find something else to track. If it was too easy and too short, you know, if she had to work at it, she'll be content, you know, but it's funny.
Yeah. I haven't figured out yet what really drives my younger one. My older one, he cares about the end. He wants that animal at the end. But he's also had times where he's found it. He's been around the elk, and then he'll stand there and you can tell he smells something else and he starts whining because I won't let him go wander off and find his next thing. Like, he just wants to be doing stuff all the time.
Oh yeah.
So I guess my question on that for you guys, especially for newer dogs and trying to help with the mental fatigue of non-recoveries, what is your opinion on taking like a hide or something to give them if you have a non-recovery to give them as a prize on that track, whether it's if you can take them back to an area that you know there was blood and set it off there somewhere? Like, do you think there's any benefit to doing that in terms of like trying to keep the dog from feeling, I don't know if they feel defeated with non-recoveries? I know I've read stories about a lot of other tracking dogs not, you know, having a difference in behavior if they have a string of non-recoveries as well. But what's your guys' opinion on that?
I think you're going to teach that dog that if it doesn't get to the end, you're going to give it a prize anyways.
And it does, which means it tells it doesn't have to get to the end. It can go as far as it feels like going, and then turn around to mom and have the time of its life playing with a hide. Kenny, was it you?
So
go ahead.
What's that?
No, go ahead. I was going
to say, what the advice I give everyone, because just like people, a dog can get frustrated when they go on track after track with nothing at the end. What I tell people to do is go back, lay a mock trail, let it get the win. Lay an easy mock trail, let it get the win.
Yeah. So, Kenny, did you freeze up? You did. No, there you are.
I know of.
No, you're back. So, was it you who used this analogy to Lauren's point? If a dog gets too many non-recoveries or no fines, is it going to bother the dog? Somebody, Kenny, man, I thought it was you, but maybe it wasn't. Somebody used the analogy of the dog that chases cars. It never freaking catches the car, but it constantly keeps chasing them. Was that you, Kenny? Have you heard that? Where did I hear that?
No, that was it Ron? No, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But I don't think that it bothers a dog. There is that argument, yeah, that in that conversation that man, I've been on 12 no fines, man. My dog's gonna get defeated. Well, I don't know. That dog down around the corner never stopped chasing my car and has never caught me once. And
Yep.
And I would think you could see signs if the dog's tracking and wants to track and committed to it. It ain't bothering him. And the only way, how does a basketball player get out of a shooting slump? Keep shooting.
Yep.
I
guess that's a fair point. My dog's never caught the rabbit that's in our backyard, but he tries every single time.
Every day. Yeah. I don't know.
There they go.
Oh, Jared McKinney says he thinks that was Ron that said the parked car analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Was coonhounds, if you can hear this in the background.
Oh, yeah, I hear him. Yep.
Not as bad as a bloodhound, though.
I know, a melodious tone of a bloodhound. The swamp song of a bloodhound. Right, baby girl? Yep. Cool.
Yeah, so the advice I give is when that happens, just go lay an easy mock track. Let him get a win on a mock.
Yeah.
Rather than taking something out in the field. So there's a couple comments here, Matt. One of them I want to hit on is Travis. Says be careful / diligent with dogs that have high hunt drive. The hunt may be more rewarding, and therefore they may choose not to end the hunt if the reward at the end isn't as valuable. Not sure. I'm not fully understanding that. Are you, Matt?
Let me read it again. Be careful with dogs that have high hunt drive. The hunt may be more rewarding, and therefore they may choose not to end the hunt if the reward at the end isn't as valuable. Travis clarified, but I interpret that as you got to make sure that it's a high value prize at the end of the line to motivate a dog that really likes the track to get to the end. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by that.
Yeah, Travis, see if tell us if we were in the ballpark or not on our analogy there. Let's see. There were a couple other. Maybe not. Maybe not there yet. So, you know what? There was one here. Here, Greg says, where can I find information on isolation drills? So, Kenny, I'll let you answer that. But Lauren, I'd be curious, what type of isolation drills did you do, and which one did you think had the biggest impact? And 3-part question: what specific problems were you trying to solve?
Yeah, so the main one, at least going into the test, was the 90s, because especially left turns, my dog is very right-sided, so he struggles more with the left turns, but he would blow past them very commonly. So the isolation drill we did the most was, again, just those short tracks with a single 90-degree turn. And he, from having the videos and recording him, started to realize that when he would blow past it, he would start to lift his nose off. His nose would be on the ground if he was on the line. He'd get past the 90, and then you'd see his nose come up, and he'd start looking kind of the side. He'd go back down. And a couple times he would then, you would think he was about to circle back and then wouldn't quite do it, and then would just keep going, just see whether it was wind or what he was working off of. He figured, well, it must be down here somewhere, and keep searching. So what we did a lot was, or Kenny taught me to do, was when he got past that 90, the minute I started seeing his head come up again, I would give him a couple seconds to see if he would do it himself. And if he didn't, once that nose came up, I would just walk him, wouldn't say anything, because I didn't want to take him off that scent. I didn't want to tell him to leave it or anything. I would just pull him back around, take him 20, 30 yards before that 90, put him back on the line, and then have him do it again. And usually that second time he would get it and he would do fine. And
so let's say the 90 went left, he would overshoot it, his head would come up, then you would just walk around to the right. You would loop to the right and come back and intersect that first leg 30 or so yards before the 90 and working back to it. Then he'd pick up that left turn.
Correct. Yep. I would take him back before, take a wide berth around to the right, put him back on the line. Usually I would just have to walk him back to it and he'd find it himself. Or if I saw blood or saw a hoof print, I would re-cue him, but then he would pick it up the next time. So that's the one that we did most often. I think that was really valuable because it was, I've seen it so far translate into other things. So one thing I've started on now that I feel like he's gotten better at the 90s is starting then to work on more like VBACs, or the one I did this past weekend. There's like a set of like two kind of offset trees, and I like kind of like this, and I came up the side here, and then I just did a loop around this other tree, and then kept going at like a random exit out that other way. So starting to do like introduce him to swirls, scent pulls, VBACs, things like that. And I've noticed him being able to take what he's learned from the 90 and apply it to those, in terms of if he blows past that part of the VBAC or the loop that I do, or the spiral, he'll start to correct himself, and he's starting to do a lot more circling back. And he's always been a dog that likes to double check himself. Like he'll check things 2 or 3 times before he'll commit to it. But it's, I think even just something as seemingly simple as a 90-degree turn, doing those isolation drills and teaching him how to correct himself on that I'm starting to see it translate to other challenges.
Yeah, because the way I see it, Kenny, I'm interested in your thought. I always like to put myself out there and then have you correct me if I'm wrong, because a dog doesn't understand a right turn, a left turn, a VBAC or whatever. It understands it's there's no scent anymore, and I have to find it again. So it's going to develop its methods of finding it, no matter of what type of turn it is. So you did that drill on 90s, but the dog did the same damn thing on a VBAC because it just knows that the scent's not there, and this is how it found it last time. Am I on? Is that accurate, Kenny?
Yep.
Yeah, they're not.
It's all solving.
Yeah, it's just their method of problem solving is largely consistent, no matter the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to answer Greg's question, where can I find info on isolation drills? Greg, basically all it is isolating one component of a trail and working on that. So if it could be a 90-degree turn, it could be a road crossing, it could be water, So one thing we do with road crossings is we'll parallel the road, for say 75 yards, and then we'll do a 90. We'll go across the road. We may do it at an angle, or maybe we won't parallel it this time. Maybe we'll hit the road, come at it sideways, hit the road, go down the road, and basically you're just isolating that one issue or one part component of the trail. One challenge, and just working on that instead of putting it all in one big long trail.
Yeah.
So in Lauren's case, her dog was struggling with 90-degree turns. So it didn't benefit the dog to work a 500-yard trail. It benefited the dog to work 90s.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we had a leg hit elk that we tracked. He followed blood for a mile. Like, I learned pretty quickly, like, he can follow a blood trail that's either big curves, straight line, like not real, challenging turns and things, just fine. It's those 90s, the abnormal crossings, the spirals, all of those that I think are least I've seen pay off the most, and as opposed to just the standard, straight line or nice easy curves through the mountain.
Yeah. Here's Travis's clarification, Kenny. When connection keeps dropping out, basically a dog with high hunt may choose to take a wrong turn, etc., because it knows if it finally locates, its hunt is over. See it more maybe in detection, but it still applies. Point was just the topic of reward. So
yeah, I would say this: if you know your dog and you've worked your dog, you know that dog took a wrong turn intentionally. If you know how to read your dog, so yeah, I had dogs try to pull a fast one on me and take a wrong turn because they want to go hunt something else. Yeah, but did y'all lose me?
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
All right, am I back?
You're back, buddy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I've had dogs try to take a wrong turn and try to outsmart me and go track something that they wanted to go hunt. But if you work your dog and you know your dog, you're going to catch that. You're going to correct that. So for me, it's a non-issue because that's going to be nipped pretty early on in the training.
Yeah. Yeah, Travis says again, it's a Travis Apple comment hour. Isolation drills are very impactful in my opinion. Can't get a ton of learning. Can get a ton of learning in a shorter time span. Don't need a long track to learn something specific. Totally agree. And that my training has evolved, or my approach and thinking has evolved a lot in the last 2 years, year and a half to that kind of thing. In fact, this is inspiring now after I tested with Joe on the 17th. Joe helped me really realize, and it became very evident on that test that Brew was right-handed. And I was noticing that, and she became very right-handed. And I look at the Garmin and I could see it, and Joe commented on it. So I'm going to lay a bunch of left-handed 90s, a couple 100 yards, and just let her do a bazillion left-handed turns.
Yeah. And Michael Pritz says I've had few tracks where the deer did a hard 90, and that's correct. I mean, most of the time they don't. But we're not training them to follow a hard 90. We're training them to problem solve, and that's what it's all about. That's the point in a 90.
Yeah, but a deer will.
They work fast, they overshoot it. You want them to know, hey, when I run out of scent, I got to do something to get back to it.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
I think another thing too that it can help with is like I've said, my dogs like to work off thermals, and especially the younger one, I struggle with the wind searching, but he, like when the wind stops, then if they're not close enough to the line, also teaching them how to come back to something that they've lost or overshot, I think is huge. Because especially if you have one that has a tendency to try to work off the line, once that wind goes away, they don't have anything left. So I think that's where it at least is helpful, at least with my personal dogs. But
so that that's interesting. You're talking about the wind searching. I know dogs will use whatever methods they can and have at their disposal to put it all together. And it's a combination of tracking and trailing. If we're going to get that distinctive in the difference between tracking and trailing, a dog's going to use both and put it all together. But Kenny, in Lauren's circumstance, it almost sounds like the dog, and I'm just curious about that, the dog tracks and gets frustrated or impatient and just throws it and says, okay, it's around here somewhere, I just want to find it, and wants to use that wind. Is that, how do you overcome that? Or am I off? Maybe Lauren, maybe you tell me, but that's kind of what it sounds like to me.
It's a little bit with my younger dog. My older dog, he stays closer to the line. He'll keep his nose down, but as things start to shift, like I've looked at on other tracks where we've been off blood and then gotten back on it, he'll actually have lines that parallel each other depending on how the wind's going. So sometimes if he catches it on the wind, he will cut a track even though his nose is down. He doesn't necessarily try to get to the end, but he definitely uses the wind to his advantage if he can.
And that, I think that's okay. I mean, in that situation, maybe I'm misreading what you were talking about with a younger dog constantly throwing his nose up.
The younger dog, he will, he's different. Like I don't know if for him it's just wanting to get to the end, or I haven't quite, he's a harder one for me right now to figure out. I'm still learning a lot about him, but he does really like to air scent. And I think for him in his mind, and maybe it's the scent work in the past where his goal is just to get to source, whatever that is. And so I think he I wonder if he's getting confused, and I don't know if Kenny, what your thoughts are, but that's almost the impression I get from him is that if he can smell the hide, or if he's has any kind of idea of where it's at, that's kind of his goal, is he wants to just go straight to it.
Well, if he's in a scent pool and he can send it, I would fully expect the nose to come up.
Well, it's natural.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
This asking a dog to adhere to a line perfectly is not natural.
Yeah.
It's they're I look at it like this. I don't care if my dog follows that line like it's on a string.
Right.
If it gets to the end and it uses its abilities to get to the end, that's what I'm happy with.
Yeah, whether that's a combination.
It's a testing. It's a testing scenario. Even then, if they cut a 90, if they're within the callback range, I don't care.
Well, no.
No. And I've had dogs that we've tested before that it'll smell the hide at the end and try to cut out 3/4 of the line. And in that case, I just say, hey, the wind shifted directions from when we laid it. It's not your fault. So let's see if we can get the dog to reacquire the line. If not, I'm going to lay you another one.
Yeah,
because that's just natural. I would never. I don't advise anyone changing the way their dog works naturally.
And I try to discourage it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And
what other comments? You see a comment you want to snag here, Kenny?
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just looking for one.
So Michael Beck says dogs take scent into their right nostril first, and most likely the culprit for the struggle of left turns. So yes and no. I mean, they do lean on the right nostril, but typically it's when there's a new scent or there's something that's alerting. But when you take a dog that has smelled the mock trail hundreds of times, I don't think that's the case. It's more, a dominant direction.
Let me think where I saw this. Believe it or not, I think it was some Saturday morning after the news, Miranda Cosgrove show that just happened to come on. They were talking about, and they were talking about it with people. And I wonder if this applies to dogs, that your dominant nostril changes throughout the course of the day. You could, block one off and see which one inhales easier. And that's the nostril that's been doing most of the heavy lifting at that particular time, and it changes. So that's interesting. I'd never heard that dogs have a dominant nostril that predominantly right sniffing, if you will. I'd not heard that before. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, they use their right nostril for, like I said, new scents or threats, or the left nostril is more for like stuff that they're comfortable with, that they smell routinely, like their food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know why it's important, but I guess in training, knowing that when you have a new scent, maybe that's the case. And I'm gonna do some. Now I got a new thing to test out that just came in my head, and I'll share it later.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm intrigued. Yeah. Larry Beckham says, what percentage of your tracks would you say has at least 190? I don't know.
Very few.
Yeah, and seldom are they true 90s. I mean, yeah, it may turn left, but it's some kind of an arc. So, but your point is spot on. The 90 isn't to teach the dog to be able to find the 90-degree turn that the deer took, is to teach them to problem solve when they lose odor, whether it's in that creek bottom or it leaped over a log, or who knows what.
Mm-hmm.
Or it backtracked. It walked up to the road, didn't like the traffic, turned around and went to to the super tight V-back, and went somewhere else. They got to sort that out.
And Matt, this kind of, I'm going to give a little teaser on a future live stream we're going to do about the psychology of a wounded animal.
Oh yeah,
that'll be a good one.
And it'll go into some of that stuff. What do they do? Why do they do it? Why do they bed down where they bed down? So there's a little teaser on an upcoming episode.
Yeah, that's going to be. We got some good stuff coming too, man. We got some good stuff coming. We'll have to, when we're done here, let's talk about next week, because I have a couple of good ones that we've already talked about. So Lauren, what was your biggest takeaways then after working with Kenny? Walking through what we've just talked about. Hey man, here are my top 3 recommendations for new handlers based on my experience.
Oh, that's a good question. Top 3.
And it doesn't have to be 3, but you know what I'm saying. Just here's some things that I'd recommend or think about, or what really benefited me, or whatever.
I think the number one thing for me was getting an outside perspective from somebody that knows way, way, way more than me. Getting that fresh set of eyes, and having, if you've got somebody that you can find to help mentor you and help you see the things that you aren't seeing yourself. I think that's huge. So that was probably the number one thing for me that I've gathered so far, was having that fresh set of eyes. The second one was probably learning the importance of challenging my dog, and teaching him how to correct himself, how to work through those challenges, that not every line needs to be perfect or should be perfect. So that was big. And then I guess kind of fitting in with those two things is do what you can to really learn your dog. I think that, I mean, we'll see how the season goes. I think for me, a big thing, like I mentioned earlier, with my handler fatigue is having, not having that person. Like the number of times where I've been, for tracks, most of my tracks are 3.5 hours one way in the middle of nowhere. And how I've wished that I was in a more like densely populated area where I could have somebody experience, like, hey, I've got a track 30 minutes down the road. Can you come with me and just help me read the situation? And so I that was a big thing for me with my handler fatigue, was always wondering, like, did I miss a cue? Did I not know what my dog was doing? Did I, should I have pulled him, reset him here? Should I have, did I pull him off odor, which I'm sure I've done all of those things. And so, I think that'll help if I can at least come out saying, if we didn't recover it, I read my dog. This is what he was showing me from what I've learned. Learning a lot about the benefits of just sitting down, taking breaks on tracks, giving him the opportunity to get his energy back and go back at it. But I think those are the biggest things for me. And I think that'll help me a lot. And I think it's starting to change my mindset in terms of that it's not a bad thing if they struggle, because they're always learning something, and it's just going to make it better the next time. And now I'm to the point where I want my dog to struggle when I practice with him, not to the point where it takes his drive away, but I want him to have to work. Like I'm less likely to do.
And that's just it. I think is redefining the word struggle, because working to me is not struggling.
Yeah, I guess that's a better way to put it. Is I want him to have to work, and
they're building, they're applying their natural ability, and I think, but that's common. You see it all the time. Oh, my dog struggled on this one. Kenny, John Melton, sorry, John, I dropped your name. Couple of weeks ago. Oh man, he posted a line. My dog struggled. I'm looking at the line and go, where's the struggle? I've seen some great problem solving going on, John. Where's the struggle? He says, well, that's what I mean, And guys, don't think of the dog doing circles as struggling. That is, oh my God, no, that's gold. That's gold.
Yeah, and let's put it into context. It was a 32 or 36 hour. I think it was 32 hour old.
John's track, yeah.
Yeah, in 90-degree temperatures.
Yeah.
So John, don't beat yourself up too bad, or your dog too bad. I mean, that's that's a lot to ask.
Yeah. Lauren, while you were talking there about your kind of top three, and those were really very good, by the way. And your number one, I think, is spot on. Man, and for me, who I'm a guy, so I have an ego, but I think I keep it in check very well. But I was super, super shy about, getting feedback and letting it, because I thought my dog had to be as good as that 6-year-old dog, when my dog was 1-year-old, and I was embarrassed if she couldn't, and you got to get over that.
Yeah.
You can't be that way. And that held me back a little bit, because I was really guarded about what I would let people see. And I was really guarded about testing. I wouldn't go test because I put on the ego defense that it doesn't get me anything. Testing, I have my UBT1. That's all I need to do anything I need to do. There's and I held myself back for 1.5 years. And now I have gone completely off the rails the other way. I since then, I've gotten my UBT2, my ABTA started in the season. I want to do my ABT finish next, day after tomorrow. I'm testing for my UBT off lead. I promised a good friend of mine that I would take a UBT3 at her event when my dog's in the prime, and I'm going to keep that promise because I made it. And it's not because I want my wall back here, laden with ribbons. But it's just, I don't know. I'm sort of addicted to it now, and I get better for it. When I went and tested with Joe, I learned so. I'm like, man, that was great. Joe helped me, identify something that I kind of thought was starting to emerge a little bit. But it just solidified it right there for me. And it was right there on that overlay. I can't deny it. And that was, to me, that was pure gold.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what I'm going to learn next week. I can't wait till I do my ABTA finished, and get somebody else, one of Kenny or Kayla or Ralph or somebody who Ethan, whoever might judge it at some time, in their experience, on my handling and my dog. You know, I'm starving for that stuff. But something else you said, Lauren, that made draw a thought for me. You know, I mentioned if you can track off, if you can run practice lines off lead to see your dog's natural tendencies. Well, maybe if you're not ready for off lead, get a light but strong cord and put a goddamn 100-foot cord on it and just stay the hell away from the dog.
Yep.
Just stand back and just let it go. Don't be on it. You know, stand at the get it in the field or something. And this is for anybody. You know, you will be pleasantly surprised at how much you can learn and just how different it is to watch your dog do what the dog wants to do without you pushing it or tripping over it or you know, unintentionally influencing it some way. You know, just stay the hell from it on that 100-foot rope. That's you know, let it do its thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think I will try that, because I don't know that unless I have a very securely fenced in area that we're quite ready to do anything off leash right now. But
don't do it.
Yeah, I like the idea of the long line. I think that's great. And going back to what you mentioned too about being afraid to show, like, you know, show people the more difficult, the parts where you're having trouble. I mean, you can ask Kate, the first video I sent him, like I in my mind, I was so stressed when I was about to send that, because I'm like, he's gonna look at these and be like, how are these dogs allowed to go out there and track for people? I mean, we can't charge out here, so it's a free service, so you get so you don't pay for it. But it was definitely not a representation of what my dogs had done in the past, what I'd seen them do. Yeah. And I was very nervous to send it to him, especially as the first video that I was sending. But I mean, he picked up on little things like, oh, your dogs are trying to search the hit site, and I was restricting them too much, or you know, you held your dog back here, like little things that even though in my mind I thought it was a total mess of a track, or lack thereof. I don't know how long they actually decided to track on that one, but it was kind of impressive, all the like other little handler things that he was able to pick up on from that video, even with my dog not necessarily wanting to work that day. So it's definitely got me over that fear. And I think too, along those lines, is having, and like Kenny said before, having, you know, working with one person, I think can be really beneficial. Like I love the group that I'm in. Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery is fantastic. You know, there's a ton of people that are willing to provide advice, and I've learned a ton from them. But it's hard when you don't, like, I think having somebody where I've been able to send videos and he's gotten to know my dogs and see patterns with them repeatedly really helps. It's great getting advice from all these people that know more than you, but then having a person that can really watch your dogs learn and progress, I think can be really helpful as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Man, I love talking about this stuff. Kenny and I've really been rambling here, so I apologize for that, buddy. I'm just feeling inspired, I guess, because I love this conversation. So there's a couple more.
That's what I say. You want to hit some comments?
Yeah, let's hit a couple more comments here. Let's grab this one, Kenny, for you. James Tucker says, how many tracks, Kenny, are you laying now that we are close to summer heat and snakes? Well, snakes, I'm laying 0 tracks, just so you know that. How many a week, a month are you doing now that you guys down there in the southern hemisphere are approaching the summer?
About 5 to 6 a day every day.
For different dogs, though, right?
Right, yeah. On average, 1 trail a day per dog, but sometimes, you know, if we have a problem, we're working through some isolation drills, you know, we may run 2, 3, or 4. But it's every day. We don't quit.
You guys are out grinding every day, but you're not grinding that same dog 4 or 5 times a day.
No. On average, it's one trail a day, but we may work. We're still going to work the dog more than one trail, but it'll be some leash handling stuff or
Sure. Yeah.
But
well, you lost me at
actual trail. Yeah. They're all right.
I was listening. I was mowing the lawn the other day, Kenny, and I was listening to the lease deliberation with Brian, Perry, and Daryl, and Perry talking about that freaking getting in that swamp, and you say, "Oh yeah," but what he didn't know, there's an alligator 10 feet away from, or 10-foot gator just 5 feet away, or whatever. I'm like, well, you freaking baby, man, you guys are freaks down there.
That's just about every track. There's a gator.
I know. It's just, to me, that is so foreign. Here, let's grab Larry's. Larry Beckham. I've been told more than once I need to get to training off lead, and I've heard y'all say it. Heck, can he even prove to me that I'm hindering his dog? For some reason, it didn't click with me until this past weekend. I was just like, I see the problem now. It's me. My wife will never hear me say that, though. Okay. I don't know
make sure
what light bulb went off for him, but no, that's great, man.
It should have, honestly, it should have been the day that I made, which
I know.
I will share that video at some point, but we're using it for seminars first. It should have been that day that light bulb went off.
Yeah.
When he wanted badly to correct his dog, and his dog was right the whole time.
Yep.
But
here, Kenny.
It's a little slower when you have a bloodhound, Anyways, what's Kevin got here?
Yeah. Could you explain and go into the details on what is involved with the ABTA? He says 1, 2, and 3 and so forth, but what he means is started, seasoned, and finished, and the so forth might mean elite. You want to walk through, or do you want me to, buddy?
Go ahead. I'm gonna test you.
So, what's that?
So we're going to test you here, see if you know.
You're going to test me? Yeah, keep it straight, man. So, yeah, glad to do it. The ABTA started level, that's a 400 to 500 yards, 2 90-degree turns, hooves with 2 ounces of blood, 1 wound bed, and a property boundary. You are required to identify the property boundary and ensure that we have permission to cross it. You are not required to find the wound bed, but we would like you to. You certainly, we would like you to call it out when you do find it.
2 to 6 hours old.
Oh yeah, 2 to 6 hours. Yep, 2 to 6 hours old. That's the age. The seasoned level is 800 to 1,000 yards. Hoof with 2 ounces of blood. 3 90-degree turns, 1 scent challenge, such as a zigzag, a spiral, a star, some type of scent challenge, 30 by 30 yard scent challenge, 2 wound beds, a property stop. The property stop is a 5-minute pause at the property, and then you must re-engage your dog. You've got 1 hour to run this when you have 30 minutes to run the started. I didn't mention that, but the seasoned, you get 1 hour to run that 800 to 1,000 yards. There's a shot site analysis. There's at least 1 wound bed analysis. Obviously, we want you to find one, and we're going to have you talk about what you see there. What I missed, Kenny?
8 to 12 hours old.
Yeah, they're the age again. Yeah, 8 to 12 hours old. Yep.
On the started, we show you the shot site and the direction of travel. On a season, we do not show you the direction of the line.
Yep. You know what? I wonder if I've got I made these little handler briefing cards. They're in my car. All right, so let me do finish. This is good for me, Kenny. So keep me between the ditches on the finish. Lauren, I hope you're paying attention because we're gonna get you scheduled for all 3 of these. Okay.
Yep.
When you're ready. So the finished it is 1,000 to 1,200 yards, right? Help me out on that one. I think the 1,000 to 1,200 yards is 12 to 16 hours old. It is hoof with 2 ounces of blood, so that's constant throughout all of them. Hoof with only 2 ounces of blood. You get 90 minutes to run that. There is a 50 to 60 yard scent gap. There is a grid search somewhere on the line. There is the dog will have run a portion of the line up to like 75 yards. There are animal scent distractions throughout the course of the track at anywhere. There are 2 wound beds, 2 or 3, Kenny, I don't remember. Two wound beds, 5 turns of any degree angle. And what else? What have I missed?
We do not show you the shot site or direction.
Yeah, that's right. No shot site or direction. You're showing a kind of a 30 by 30 area where I think he was standing about, the classic. I think he was standing about right here. And your dog's got to find it, figure it out. I forgot about that. Yep. So now you want to learn about what? Go ahead.
You get 10 minutes to find the shot site and progress.
You know what? And that's a good point. So let's back up on the started and the seasoned. Well, let's just do these 2. You get 2 callbacks. The third callback is an unsuccessful test. Failure to progress for a period of 10 minutes equals 1 callback.
Yep.
So that's the started in the season. On the finished, is it 1 or do you still get 2 callbacks, Kenny?
Still 2.
Still get 2 in the finished. We don't change that till we get to the elite. So the failure to progress is for a period of 10 minutes equals 1 callback. So yeah. And then the elite now. Yeah, finish, you don't get shown the hit. So you got 10 minutes to find it and progress. So the elite, oh my goodness, this is gonna be, you're gonna have to really help me on this one. And we're not gonna say too much about this one because it is elite and you must draw the answers you want out of your hunter. Largely, that's part of the eliteness of the test. But the elite replicates a track that was run 24 hours before, and the deer was jumped. That that tracker could not come back and resume the track the next day, 24 hours later. So you are there then to finish the track. And the first part of the track will be that 400 to 500 yard started line that a dog will have used. So it's going to be a used line. The end of the started line becomes the jump point for the elite line. From the jump point, you have it's 1,000 to 1,200 again, isn't it, Kenny?
I think so.
I think so. We'd have to look at. We haven't run one of these yet, but we're going to. I think soon. 1,000, 1,200 yards. Again, hoof with 2 ounces of blood from the jump point.
No, from the original.
I'm sorry. Yes, from the original. Hoof with 2 ounces of blood from the original. Yes. See, I told you this is you can find there will be, again, a grid searched area somewhere along the line. There will be any of the distractions that you have found in the lower level test are eligible to be used on this line. There will be, I don't remember how many turns of any degree. I don't remember. It's probably 5 or 6. My books and there will be property challenges. And I don't know, Kenny, if we want to talk about the challenges or not.
Well, we've talked about it a little bit. There's one where you have permission to cross and one where you don't, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there you go. Property challenges. And you're going to have a gallery, the hunter.
Maybe
could. Yeah, maybe. But anyway, yeah. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. They're available. Anybody wants to really see the nitty gritty of it, the American Blood Trackers Association.org, go to the testing section, and all of the tests are published there, and you can see what they really consist of. But one thing worth noting is they're sequential. You must start at the starter level and progress through each one. You can't take the next one until you successfully complete the one before it. So you can't take a season until you successfully pass your starter. You can't take your finished until you successfully passed your season, and so forth and so on. And then there's a multi-dog.
Yep.
Why don't you talk about that one, Kenny? I'm not as familiar with that one.
Oh man, I'd have to look at it.
Anyway, it's in essence.
I'm not on my A game tonight, but it's basically a season level line, but it's the 800 to 1,000, but instead of being aged 8 to 12 hours, it's aged, I believe it's 2 to 6, and the reason for that is it's going to be more of I shouldn't say. Probably more off lead than anything. I only know of one handler that can use 2 dogs on lead, and he's just a beast. And that's Brian in Iowa, and he's got 2 beagles that he will track both dogs on lead. So he may do it, but anyways, it's 800 to 1,000 yards, 2 to 6 hours old. Demonstrate recall, all that, property line.
Yeah.
So pretty much the season level test.
We didn't talk about that. All of these tests, you have the option to run them on lead or off lead. If you run them off lead, you will be required to recall your dog by electronic means only upon instruction from the judge. Just know that. The other thing, I guess, too, worth noting is the recall distances. So on lead, it's 40 yards offline. After 40 yards, it's a recall. Or at 40 yards is a recall. And off lead, 75 yards is a recall. Offline, last contact with the line. So, it's pretty real world stuff. And speaking of real world stuff, John Keslick says that elite line reminds me of when I tried to track a deer the next day that was jumped by myself without the hunter. Hunter sent me the wrong pin and put us 500 yards in the wrong direction. LOL. No, I don't see LOL there. I see devil horns.
I'm so angry.
Yeah, I would be very upset about that. And I tend to be pretty tolerant to stuff, but that would do it, because that would make me mad, dude. But talking about, I'm glad that elite reminded you of something, because that's the premise, man. We're trying to create something that's reality based and that you could run into any given Sunday, as they say, and a lot of this is derived by handler experience over the years. So it's happened.
And honestly, you could take these tests, and if you sit down and look at them, you can train your dog based off these test lines. Have 100%. A solid dog.
Yeah.
We also have the introductory evaluation. Which it starts out pretty simple. It's a 150 to 200 yard trail, 190-degree turn. 50 yards of it will have blood, the rest won't. And basically it's to help establish a baseline of where you and your dog is at. So you'll run that, and you don't even have to have experience to do this.
No.
And we will basically follow behind you, and then we will help establish a baseline of where you're at. And based off of that baseline, we will have you lay another trail. We'll be there with you. We'll have you lay it, show you how to do it. And then you get to run your dog on it and we'll see, hey, this baseline was right, or maybe we need to back it up a little. Maybe we need to make it a little harder. But regardless, we're going to tweak that, and you're going to leave there with a plan of how to get to the next level of that started level line. Not necessarily to run the started level test, but to get you to that point. So all this is a progression. All these tests and evaluations is progression design to advance you as a tracker, you and your dog as trackers.
Yeah. Chuck Darby again. Testing is probably one of the best ways to find out how you and your dog are doing. The judge is going to give you tips and advice on what you should work on and give you validation on what you're doing right too, and then help you prepare for what the next level test might look like. So there's no failure in testing, whether you leave there with a ribbon or not. There's no failure in testing.
Yep. I've learned a lot every time I've tested.
Yeah.
That's really the reason I do it, because it's another opportunity for somebody with more experience than me to watch me and my dog work and help us learn. And
that's what held me back, because I didn't want. I was so dumb. Chuck Darby.
Sometimes it's someone with less experience that's the judge, and they'll still pick up on stuff that you miss. Mm-hmm. I've had judges watch me with way less experience, and I left there with some good advice.
Because it's not so much about the experience as it is the perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
That you're viewing it. Yeah. So, Chuck, I think we answered this. Maybe you missed it. Do you have to pass the finished in order to run the elite? The answer is yes. The other thing we're noting, finished and elite can only be run at events. They're not eligible for private testing. They have to be done at events. Any decision made on whether the Georgia event will be held this year, Kenny? I think we know the answer to that, but
there hasn't been a final decision yet because we've been waiting on the landowner. Like I said, that we said his property got wrecked pretty hard by the hurricane, and I don't know that they've gotten it cleaned up yet. We haven't heard, but I will find out. And if we do have it, we'll let everyone know. At this point, it would be right before season.
Yeah.
So I honestly probably wouldn't bank on it unless we just do a kind of a get together with some light testing. It's going to be hot, but we may just do like a preseason jamboree.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be fun. Yeah. So as long as we're on that topic, let's run down our event promo again. So this coming weekend, PA, you guys, those that are going, I know dang well you've been very active in the chat and getting the final preparations laid for the event this weekend in Pennsylvania, Butler, PA. You can still register, I gotta believe, right, Kenny?
Yep.
You can still register for seminars. Do you know, are there still testing slots if somebody wanted to? I know we try to be really careful about late registrations, particularly on finished and finished level stuff.
Yeah, we do have some room. It's getting tight on some of the days, but we could fit a couple in.
So it's not too late if you are so inclined. The end of June, the next event is the Michigan event, weekend of June 28th. That's shaping up to be a pretty good one too. We talked about it, probably going to expand that into a 2-day event in terms of seminars and things. Oh, I'm sorry, Winburn, PA. I said Butler. Thank you, Michael. It's in Windber, PA, Pennsylvania, which is still Western Pennsylvania. But anyway, the Michigan event is shaping up to be a good one. Still working on what some testing might look like there. But there may be some limited stuff available there. There's a couple on the schedule as part of the event. So then after that is Iowa in September 12, 13, 13, 14, whatever that weekend is. And there'll also be testing available there. All of this stuff is listed on the website under the events tab, and you can register there. You can get a hold of Kenny or me or any one of us for information on those. And, I'm going to be most helpful for the Michigan event, and Michael Beck on the PA event. And who's our Iowa liaison? Kenny, do you know?
Jeff Still
for Iowa. But give us a shout if you have questions about it, guys. All right. I think we're about there. So, Lauren.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on. This is a really good conversation. And I get really fascinated about the Western tracking, and I think it'd be fun to track it out. It'd be a ton of fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's exhausting. Like one of my screening questions. I don't screen much anymore just because we don't have the opportunity to track as much out here. It's getting better because it's getting more popular. I think that'll help us out a lot. But is how close can I get my vehicle to that hit site? Because it is.
Yeah. We have elk in northern Michigan, and one of my good friends has recovered a couple. But it's not Colorado type elk tracking. It's just terrain is different. I mean, they still go a long ways, but
yeah,
just a lot different. So, All right, good stuff, man. Really appreciate it. Great stuff, Lauren. Thanks for sharing your experience. Hopefully, someone can learn and we can help flatten somebody else's curve based on your experience. I think that's great. I always enjoy these conversations. I seem to have monopolized all of the commentary. Sorry, Kenny. I just totally bulldozed you and pretended like I was.
I'm running on fumes right now. So
yeah, I can tell your tank is empty. So, all right. Well, good deal. Lauren, hang with us for just a minute here as we close it out, and we'll be on for next week. Good stuff coming up. The psychology of wounded deer will be a good one. I've never heard of a wounded deer psychologist, but we're going to be one. So, anyway, guys, more the good, less the bad. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the comments and questions. And until next time, guys.